At the age of 40, a man of the royal house of Egypt becomes a shepherd. 40 years later, that shepherd leaves his flock to shepherd people, a nation of slaves numbering in the millions. Moses is that 80-year-old shepherd. He leads the people of Israel out of the hands of their cruel master, Egypt, after they have resided in that land for more than 2 centuries. When Moses was 40 years of age, he thought he was qualified to break Egypt's iron grip over his people. How did he show this? Moses witnessed an incident of terrible injustice, an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brothers. He was eager to act, so he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Commenting on this, the Christian disciple Stephen said, he thought that his brothers would grasp that God was giving them salvation by his hand, but they did not grasp it. His own people branded him a killer. Fearing for his life, Moses fled Egypt and journeyed across the wilderness to Midian. During those 40 years, Moses would cultivate patience, meekness, humility, mildness of temper, self-control, and the ability to wait on Jehovah. Who of us has not experienced challenges similar to Moses? Have we had to overcome shyness or stand up to bullying? How do we react when faced with injustice or opposition from family or from government? Do we tend to get impatient as we wait on Jehovah to make things right? Or do we put too much confidence in ourselves and too little in Jehovah? If so, then we can learn a lesson in endurance from the example of Moses. Let us start by reading Exodus 3, 1 through 10.
Moses became a shepherd of the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. While he was leading the flock to the west side of the wilderness, he eventually came to the mountain of the true God, to Horeb. Then Jehovah's angel appeared to him in a flame of fire in the midst of a thorn bush. As he kept looking, he saw that the thorn bush was on fire, and yet the thorn bush was not consumed. So Moses said,
I will go over to inspect this unusual sight, to see why the thorn bush does not burn up.
When Jehovah saw that he went over to look, God called to him out of the thorn bush and said,
Moses, Moses.
To which he said,
Here I am.
Then he said,
Do not come any nearer. Remove your sandals from your feet, because the place where you are standing is holy ground.
He went on to say,
I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Then Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at the true God. Jehovah added,
I have certainly seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their outcry because of those who force them to work. I well know the pains they suffer. I will go down to rescue them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land, to a land good and spacious, a land flowing with milk and honey, the territory of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now look, the outcry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen also the harsh way that the Egyptians are oppressing them. Now come, I will send you to Pharaoh, and you will bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt.
Moses now had a divine commission. The time had come for Jehovah to free his people. The time had come for Moses to be a faithful leader who does not give up. Would he accept this assignment, one that he'd been only too eager to take up 40 years earlier in Egypt? Let's pick up the Bible account at Exodus 3:11 through 22.
However, Moses said to the true God,
Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?
To this he said,
I will prove to be with you, and this is the sign for you that it was I who sent you. After you have brought the people out of Egypt, you people will serve the true God on this mountain.
But Moses said to the true God,
Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, The God of your forefathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, What is his name? What should I say to them?
So God said to Moses,
I will become what I choose to become.
and he added,
This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I will become has sent me to you.
Then God said once more to Moses,
This is what you are to say to the Israelites. Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I am to be remembered from generation to generation. Now go and gather the elders of Israel, and say to them, Jehovah, the God of your forefathers, has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he said, I have certainly taken notice of you, and of what is being done to you in Egypt. So I say, I will take you away from affliction at the hands of the Egyptians, to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will certainly listen to your voice, and you will go, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you men should say to him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has communicated with us. So please, let us make a 3-day journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to Jehovah our God. But I myself well know that the king of Egypt will not give you permission to go, unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will have to stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my extraordinary acts that I will do in it. And after that he will send you out. And I will give this people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians. And when you go, you will by no means go empty-handed. Each woman must ask her neighbor, and the woman lodging in her house for articles of silver and of gold as well as clothing. And you will put them on your sons and your daughters, and you will plunder the Egyptians.
What a dramatic change 40 years has brought to Moses. Here is a different Moses, one who is uncertain, shy. Moses has serious doubts about his own qualifications. He believes that his commission is too much for him. In effect, he says, "Oh no, please don't ask me to do this." Can you put yourself in Moses' sandals? Have you ever been given an assignment that you feel is beyond your ability, yet you don't give up? Earnest prayer helps restore your confidence. You obey. What about Moses? Jehovah reassures him by saying, "I will prove to be with you." Yet Moses is still hesitant. Will he give up and ask Jehovah to find someone else? Note what Exodus 4:1-9 says.
However, Moses answered,
But suppose they do not believe me and do not listen to my voice, for they will say, Jehovah did not appear to you.
Then Jehovah said to him,
What is that in your hand?
He answered.
A rod.
He said,
Throw it on the ground.
So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. Jehovah now said to Moses,
Reach out your hand and seize it by the tail.
So he reached out and seized it, and it became a rod in his hand. God then said,
This is so that they may believe that Jehovah, the God of their forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you.
Jehovah said to him once more,
Put your hand, please, into the upper fold of your garment.
So he put his hand into the fold of his garment. When he drew it out, why, his hand was stricken with leprosy like snow. Then he said,
Return your hand into the upper fold of your garment.
So he returned his hand into his garment. When he drew it out of the garment, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. He said,
If they will not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, then they will certainly heed the next sign. Still, even if they will not believe these two signs and refuse to listen to your voice, you will take some water from the Nile River and pour it out on the dry land. And the water that you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry land.
Moses needs reassurance. So Jehovah gives Moses not just one, but 3 signs to show the older men proof of divine backing. And what powerful credentials these are. For the first time, a human is empowered to perform miracles. As the rest of Exodus chapter 4 shows, Moses feels inadequate to speak to Pharaoh. He pleads that he is slow of tongue, even asking Jehovah to excuse him from the task. Jehovah gives him help. Jehovah assigns Aaron as Moses' mouthpiece. Both men proceed to meet Pharaoh. Listen to what is said to Pharaoh as found at Exodus 5, 1 through 9.
Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and said to Pharaoh,
This is what Jehovah, the God of Israel, says. Send my people away, so that they may celebrate a festival to me in the wilderness.
But Pharaoh said,
Who is Jehovah, that I should obey his voice to send Israel away? I do not know Jehovah at all. And what is more, I will not send Israel away.
But they said,
The God of the Hebrews has communicated with us. Please, we want to make a 3-day journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Jehovah our God. Otherwise, he will strike us with disease or with the sword.
The king of Egypt replied to them,
Why is it, Moses and Aaron, that you are taking the people away from their work? Return to your labor.
And Pharaoh continued,
Look at how many people of the land there are, and you would have them rest from their labor?
That same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters and their foremen,
You must no longer give straw to the people to make bricks. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But you must still impose on them the same quota of bricks as they made in the past. Do not reduce it for them, for they are relaxing. That is why they are crying out, We want to go. We want to sacrifice to our God. Make them work harder and keep them busy so that they will not pay attention to lies.
Pharaoh defiantly says no to Jehovah. He is angry at the Hebrews. In turn, the people are angry at Moses. They blame him for their hardship. Moses feels sorry for the people and asks Jehovah, Why have you sent me? Jehovah patiently gives Moses a reassuring message, beginning at Exodus 6, verse 1.
So Jehovah said to Moses,
Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. A mighty hand will force him to send them away, and a mighty hand will force him to drive them out of his land.
Then God said to Moses,
I am Jehovah, and I used to appear to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty. But with regard to my name Jehovah, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as foreigners. Now I myself have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians are enslaving, and I remember my covenant. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am Jehovah, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians and rescue you from their slavery. And I will reclaim you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. And I will take you in as my people, and I will be your God. And you will certainly know that I am Jehovah your God, who is bringing you out from under the burdens of Egypt. And I will bring you into the land that I swore with an oath to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I will give it to you as something to possess. I am Jehovah.
Jehovah backs up his promise of deliverance by means of his unique name. Moses, therefore, does not give up. He obeys Jehovah, and he and Aaron prepare to meet Pharaoh again. Let's read Exodus 7, 1 through 7.
Jehovah then said to Moses,
See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your own brother, will become your prophet. You are to repeat everything that I will command you, and Aaron, your brother, will speak to Pharaoh, and he will send the Israelites away from his land. As for me, I will allow Pharaoh's heart to become obstinate, and I will multiply my signs and my miracles in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not listen to you, and I will lay my hand upon Egypt and bring my multitudes, my people, the Israelites, out of the land of Egypt with great judgments. And the Egyptians will certainly know that I am Jehovah, when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and bring the Israelites out from among them.
Moses and Aaron did what Jehovah had commanded them. They did just so. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh.
Moses now can be confident of Jehovah's backing because Moses is doing things Jehovah's way and at a time that fits Jehovah's prophetic timetable. Jehovah is about to use 10 plagues to bring Pharaoh to his knees. These disasters will show that Jehovah's sovereignty is real and that he is worthy of worship. The 10 plagues will also expose the Egyptian gods as nothing, as mere unreality. The first 3 plagues strike both the Egyptians and the Hebrews. However, the next 7 plagues do not touch the Hebrews, proof that Jehovah can set apart and protect his worshippers if they do not give up their trust in him. Now let's summarize the 10 plagues listed at Exodus 7:14 to 11:10. Plague 1. Water is turned into blood. Plague 2. Frogs invade the land and houses. Plague 3. Gnats pester man and beast. Plague 4. Gadflies swarm and bite only the Egyptians. Plague 5. Livestock die. Plague 6. Boils fester on man and beast. Plague 7. Hail strikes man, beast, and vegetation. Plague 8. Locusts swarm and eat all vegetation, left after the hailstorm. Plague 9. Thick darkness blankets Egypt for 3 days. Plague 10. The firstborn of man and livestock is killed. Pharaoh sees his firstborn dead. He hears great outcries of bitter grief rise from the houses of all the Egyptians, because they too see their firstborn dead. Pharaoh quickly summons Moses and Aaron and tells them to hurry away. Will Pharaoh's heart soften? Let's have Exodus 14, 5 through 10 answer.
Later, it was reported to the king of Egypt that the people had run away. Immediately, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart regarding the people, and they said,
Why did we do this and release Israel from serving as slaves for us?
So he made his war chariots ready, and he took his people with him. He took 600 chosen chariots, and all the other chariots of Egypt, with warriors on every one of them. Thus Jehovah allowed the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to become obstinate, and he chased after the Israelites, while the Israelites were going out with confidence. The Egyptians chased after them, and all the chariot horses of Pharaoh and his cavalrymen and his army were catching up with them while they were camping by the sea, by Pi-hahiroth, facing Baal-zephon. When Pharaoh got closer, the Israelites raised their eyes and saw the Egyptians pursuing them. The Israelites became terrified and began to cry out to Jehovah.
Will Jehovah hear their cry for help? Let's read Exodus 14, 13 through 31.
Then Moses said to the people,
Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the salvation of Jehovah that he will perform for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never ever see again. Jehovah himself will fight for you, and you will keep silent.
Jehovah now said to Moses,
Why do you keep crying out to me? Tell the Israelites that they should break camp. As for you, lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, so that the Israelites may go through the midst of the sea on dry ground. As for me, I am allowing the hearts of the Egyptians to become obstinate, so that they will go in after them. Thus I will glorify myself by means of Pharaoh and all his army, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen. And the Egyptians will certainly know that I am Jehovah, when I glorify myself by means of Pharaoh, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen.
Then the angel of the true God, who was going ahead of the camp of Israel, departed and went to their rear. And the pillar of cloud that was in front of them moved to the rear and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. On the one side it was a dark cloud. On the other side it was lighting up the night. So the one camp did not come near the other camp all night long. Moses now stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah drove the sea back with a strong east wind all night long, turning the sea basin into dry ground, and the waters divided. So the Israelites went through the midst of the sea on dry ground, while the waters formed a wall on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen began going after them into the midst of the sea. During the morning watch, Jehovah looked at the camp of the Egyptians from within the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw the camp of the Egyptians into confusion. he kept taking wheels off their chariots, so that they were driving them with difficulty. And the Egyptians were saying,
Let us flee from any contact with Israel, because Jehovah is fighting for them against the Egyptians.
Then Jehovah said to Moses,
Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians, their war chariots, and their cavalrymen.
Moses at once stretched out his hand over the sea, and as morning approached, the sea returned to its normal condition. As the Egyptians fled from it, Jehovah shook the Egyptians off into the midst of the sea. The returning waters covered the war chariots and the cavalrymen and all of Pharaoh's army who had gone into the sea after them. Not so much as one among them was allowed to survive. But the Israelites walked on dry ground in the midst of the seabed, and the waters formed a wall on their right hand and on their left. Thus Jehovah saved Israel on that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel also saw the great power that Jehovah wielded against the Egyptians, and the people began to fear Jehovah and to put faith in Jehovah and in his servant Moses.
Are the Hebrews happy that they endured to see the salvation of Jehovah? Yes. They break out in a joyful victory song. Listen to them sing. You too can stand and sing along. Song number 149 represents what is found at Exodus 15, 1 through 21. If you can, let us all stand and sing Song 149. Please be seated. The account we just read vividly illustrates Jehovah's use of power in a way that serves notice on all who defy him. Thus, what can we take away from our Bible reading? The fact that the Hebrews suffered in Egypt and Jehovah delivered them is concrete proof that our hope for deliverance from Satan's world is not an empty one. When you seem trapped in a corner by life's problems, do not give up. The God who parted the Red Sea can provide escape for you too. If during the coming great tribulation you feel trapped by Satan's hordes, remember, endure to the end. Jehovah will provide escape for you and for all his worshippers who don't give up.